Hi guys, so first of all I hope everyone is staying safe during this difficult COVID pandemic. I've just been staying home, as you can tell by my super long hair. Actually some of you may know that I've decided to take a step back from racing this year to focus on school. But it's been getting really boring, so I'm going to make a series of short RC related videos, which I hope will help you guys. So this specific video is going to be on my pre-race preparation that I do to my car between every run, qualifying and finals. So this entire process takes only about 10 minutes, so you should be able to do it no matter at a big race or a smaller club race. So obviously the first step you want to do after your run is to clean your car with an air compressor. And some areas that tend to accumulate dust is the shocks and the axles on all four corners. So after that, I've just removed my tires here. And the first thing you want to do is to untweak your car. So I just loosen the battery tape, but make sure the battery is still in place. And I just loosen the top deck. So now you want to make sure the car is sitting flat on the board, which should be the case if you didn't have any crashes. So next I just use a tweak stick and I retighten the top deck. So as you can see here, I'm using a torque screwdriver, which is a really handy tool, but I wouldn't say it's necessary. All this does is ensure that I don't over tighten the screws in the car, which some people may tend to do. And as you saw, I tighten the screws in the top in a cross pattern, which I do for the upper bulkheads and the shock towers as well, to make sure that the car stays flat as I tighten all the screws. So the next step is to check the downstop of your cars. So I do this using the 10mm droop blocks and the droop gauge. And you want to place the droop blocks where there are no screws on the car, on the chassis. So I place it here in the front and here on the rear. So first of all, you want to make sure that you're checking the downstops with the shocks attached to the car. And on the rear of the car, you check it on the rear of the rear arm. On the front, it's on the front of the front arm. So let's say I want to set 4.4 in the rear of this car. So I check that 4.4 passes under the rear corner of the rear arm with no resistance. So in this case, I feel some resistance. So I'm going to tighten this screw. And now it's perfect. So on this side, as you can see, when I tap the arm on 4.4, there's a sound, which means that's too high. So I loosen this screw. There's still some sound. And now it's perfect. So you just want to repeat this process on the front. So the next step is to set the cross tweak of your car, which I do using the hoodie setup wheels, to make sure that the wheels on all four corners are perfectly round and of the same size. So I've just got the car on the board, sitting on the setup wheels with a battery in. And now I'm going to lift the front of the car. So what you're checking is that the two front wheels lift from the board at the exact same time. So as you can see here, the two wheels are lifting at the same time. It might be a bit difficult to see, but after you've done it a few times, you should be able to tell. So what happens if this wheel is lifting before this wheel? Well, I will tighten this shock collar and loosen this shock collar by equal amounts. So as you can see here, I've made a marking on the shock with a Sharpie. So this allows me to see that I'm turning the left and right shocks by the same amount. So if I tighten this by a quarter turn, I'll loosen this by a quarter turn. And you just repeat the process on the rear after you've done the front. So now that you've set the tweak of your car, the next step is to check the camber and the toe. So you need to do this using the hoodie setup station. So I've just attached the setup system to the rear of the car, and the front is being supported by a jute block under the chassis. So the first step is to check the camber. So I just compress the suspension, and as you can see, I want to set it at 1.5 degrees. So here is about 1.8, and same on this side. So what you need to do is to change the length of the upper turnbuckles. So now as you can see, the camber is perfect at 1.5 degrees. Because I'm running the ARS system on this car, I also need to check the rear toe. So using the toe gauge, I check the toe, and here is 1.5 degrees. But because I'm running this car in urban, I only need 1 degree of rear toe. So I adjust the turnbuckle. It's still too much. And now it's perfect at 1 degree. And this side is not enough toe. And now it's perfect at 1 degree on both sides. So the process is slightly different on the front because the first step is to measure that these two turnbuckles are exactly the same length. So using a pair of calipers, I measure the distance between the ball cups. 24.8 and 24.8. So this measurement will depend a lot on your setup of your bump steer, your Ackerman, your track width, and also if you're using the optional steering plate like I am here. But a good starting point is about 24.7 mm. So these two turnbuckles must be exactly the same length so that the steering is symmetrical. So after I've checked that, I turn on the radio and the car, and I attach the setup system, and now I check the toe out. So on asphalt, we run 1 degree per side, which is perfectly set up here. And if your toe out was wrong, like too much or too little, you adjust these two turnbuckles by exactly the same amount to keep the symmetry. And the last step is just to check the camber, which is exactly the same process as on the rear. So after you check your camber and your toe, the next step is to check your steering lock. So on the X-ray car, we've made it really easy to check your steering lock. So with the car on, I just turn the radio to full lock and check that this turnbuckle is still free, but there's not too much play. So I would say that this is slightly too much play. So I go into the EPA and increase the endpoint. So as you can see, the steering is not moving when I shake the knuckle. And this should be the case on both sides. But one thing to look out for is if the turnbuckle is binding. Like as you can see here, the turnbuckle is tight, which means that you have too much steering lock. So you need to adjust it until the turnbuckle is super free, but there's still not too much play in the steering. And on the X-ray car, the steering lock is limited by this inner shim, which you can see under the ball stud. So it hits the steering arm, and this is how you determine your overall steering lock. And the team has different size shims to use here for different conditions depending on the traction and the surface. So the final step is to check the ride height of your car. I check the ride height at these points in the front and in the rear of the car because this is the narrowest point and it will have the least chassis wear on asphalt. So in the rear, the ride height should be 5.2, and in the front it should be 5. This is a good starting point for most conditions. So if the ride height was too low on the front, I would tighten both left and right spring collars by the same amount to preserve the tweak of the car. So now you have a car that's perfectly prepared and almost ready to run. The last step is to apply tire additive. For our urban touring series, we have a spec handout hoodie additive. And how I prepare the tires for our urban track with this additive is I just apply the additive straight onto the tire and let it dry in the air for 5 minutes, after which I use tire warmers at 60 degrees for as long as I need before I run. I hope you found this video useful, and I hope to see everyone at the track soon.